Adam Taxin talking with Daniel Greenfield here on Tuesday, August 21st, 2012, about his current column, End of the Alternative Media. His columns in general can be found at sultankanish.blogspot.com. Daniel, welcome. And first of all, why don't you get people up to speed on the news about the Village Voice, which I confess I hadn't even heard about until I read your column.
Well, the Village Voice, like most of the so-called alternative media, is slowly dying. It's dying so slowly that the actual time of death probably can't really be set, because the brand is still worth something, so there's always probably going to be some kind of website labeled the Village Voice, even if it's owned by entirely different people, and if the website just runs the occasional movie review and restaurant listing. But the Village Voice, the paper that had any real influence, we did.
Can you give people a little bit more, people may be listening in Olympia, Washington, who may just not be that familiar with the Village Voice, and maybe you can catch us up on it.
Well, the Village Voice is the ultimate alternative newspaper, when that actually meant something. It's really becoming hard to explain that, because really for anybody under 30, the term alternative newspaper really doesn't mean very much, because, again, as the column discusses, really everything is alternative now. But it was a place that was supposedly further out on the edge from the newspapers. This was where you could get real unfiltered left-wing ideas, alternative cartoons that the normal media would not print, and all sorts of things like that, which was really the whole idea, the kind of music, the kind of culture and style and politics that were too out there for the media. But now that there isn't really anything out there, the Village Voice, which is the quintessential alternative newspaper, really, it's hard to even explain what it was, because in the present tense, 2012, the entire idea of it has very little relevance.
And I guess the roots of it are in the beatnik culture of the 50s. I don't know if that's as far back as it goes, but that's the way it at least seems to me. And it seems like...
Yeah, that's definitely...
It seems to me
that's definitely a major departure point.
It seems to me that the alternative is now the mainstream, and that, of course, leads to, I guess, the conclusion of your thesis in this column. That the mainstream is now something of the alternative.
Yes, it really does.
Can you explain how that fits in with Ron?
We are now the alternative, and mainstream is the... Well, the mainstream is now the alternative is the mainstream, and the Village Voice is now every single newspaper in America, which makes the Village Voice completely irrelevant.
And what is the effect of the internet, and also, not that you get into this in your column, Twitter, Facebook, etc., what are the effects they've had on the Village Voice in particular, beyond the effects they've had on regular media?
Well, the basic ground is obvious. It destroys the whole advertising and listing business. It also destroys the need for people to actually go out, pick up this glossy, well, in this case it wasn't very glossy, but this thick, dirty, greasy paper, and start reading through it, whether it's the New York Times or the Village Voice, then it makes it irrelevant either way. Certainly the Village Voice, which also depended on listings much more heavily, is completely out because of this.
And Craigslist had a role in that as well, I assume.
Well, Craigslist was the big part of what destroyed the media. It destroyed the media in general. It certainly destroyed the Village Voice, which depended really on these types of core ads. Craigslist was picked up in general, was picked up precisely in the kind of early adopters who were big in the kind of areas that alternative media served. Those were the people who were first on board with this. They were the first on board with the Yelp. They were the first on board with all these digital alternatives to the Village Voice.
Any final thoughts?
Well, that it's easy to celebrate the end of the Village Voice, but really we're dealing with the Village Voiceation of the entire media and the entire culture.
Daniel Greenfield, as always, thank you for your time today.